Investigators in Texas are working this morning to learn what caused a deadly roller coaster accident. A 51-year-old mother fell to her death Friday while riding the coaster with her family at Six Flags over Texas.
Roller coasters are meant to thrill us, pushing the boundaries of speed, height, and adrenaline. But sometimes, those heart-pounding rides take a turn for the worse, transforming fun into pure terror. Today we'll talk about 7 roller coasters that turned into absolute nightmares, leaving riders scarred, both physically and emotionally. Buckle up, and let's get on this horrifying ride. Number 1. Shoot the Rapids, Cedar Point, 2013. Shoot the Rapids at Cedar Point wasn't a traditional roller coaster, but a water ride designed to give guests the thrill of plunging down watery drops in a log-like boat. Cedar Point is famous for its record-breaking coasters, but it also had several water-based attractions. Shoot the Rapids opened in 2010 to complement the park's lineup of rides that offer splashes and drenching fun. The design involved a chain lift taking a boat up a hill, followed by a drop and winding turns through a canyon-like setting. It promised a fun family adventure with a dash of adrenaline. On June 13, 2013, visitors looking for a cool, refreshing break from the summer heat boarded the ride as usual. Everything seemed fine at first. The boat approached the lift hill, which was supposed to hook onto the chain underneath. But on this particular day, something went terribly wrong. The boat didn't latch onto the chain mechanism. Instead, it started rolling back down the hill. Because there was very little space and momentum was building in reverse, the boat tipped over and flipped upside down, trapping riders beneath it. People nearby described the scene as chaotic and frightening. Water splashed everywhere as park employees and bystanders rushed to help. Trapped under the boat, riders struggled to keep their heads above water. Some tried pushing against the sides of the boat, while others yelled in panic. Park staff arrived quickly, jumping into the water to lift the boat and pull people out. It was a tense rescue because water rides can be tricky in an emergency. There's always the risk of drowning, especially if the boat is overturning and the riders are strapped in. 7 people were injured in this incident. Thankfully, none of the injuries were fatal, but some riders had bruises, muscle strains, and cuts from hitting the ride's structure, and from the rough contact with water and debris. Paramedics arrived on the scene to evaluate everyone, and those needing further care were taken to a nearby hospital. The park immediately closed. Shoot the Rapids to investigate what had gone wrong. What they found was a design flaw in the chain dog, the part of the boat that attaches to the lift chain. Because it didn't connect properly, the boat had nothing to secure it going up the hill, causing it to roll backward. Cedar Point shut the ride down as safety inspectors studied every piece of the mechanism. Although Cedar Point is generally known for high safety standards, this accident proved that even well-known parks are not immune to mechanical errors. The park reopened the ride later that season, but the coaster's reputation had been shaken. Attendance on the ride was never the same, and guests felt uneasy about boarding it. Within a few years, the decision was made to close Shoot the Rapids permanently. Part of the decision was likely based on the negative publicity, while another part came from ongoing maintenance issues. Cedar Point, aiming to maintain its status as a top amusement resort, typically invests in brand new attractions rather than constantly fixing problematic rides. Thus, Shoot the Rapids made its final splash not long after its infamous accident. While no lives were lost, the memory of riders trapped under that overturned boat served as a sobering reminder that water attractions, like roller coasters, carry inherent risks that should never be overlooked. Number 2. The Smiler, Alton Towers, 2015. The Smiler at Alton Towers in England quickly became one of the most talked about roller coasters in Europe when it opened. It attracted thrill seekers with its record-holding number of inversions, promising to flip riders a dizzying 14 times in a single run. Its twisted track, full of loops and corkscrews, created a visual spectacle that dared guests to test their nerves. Naturally, the ride had massive hype surrounding its debut, and it drew large crowds who were eager to experience this technological marvel. On June 2, 2015, a day that started with excited visitors lining up for the Smiler ended in a frightening collision that went down in theme park history. Earlier in the day, a test train with no passengers had been sent out on the track. Because of a glitch or some mechanical hiccup, it stalled partway through the course, coming to a stop in an area that wasn't easy to see from the control booth. Under normal circumstances, the ride system should detect a stalled train and prevent another train from being dispatched. However, the staff that day apparently made an error, or didn't realize the empty train was stuck. They sent out a train with passengers, and that train, running at significant speed, slammed right into the stalled one. The force of the impact was tremendous. Riders described a loud, grinding crash, followed by jolts that felt like being in a car accident at highway speed. Steel against steel, combined with the momentum of a full ride vehicle, can be catastrophic. Several passengers suffered gruesome injuries. 2 young women in particular were trapped in the front row. Recovery teams found that they had crushed limbs, leading to partial amputations. Others in the same train had broken legs, shattered knees, and various forms of trauma from being violently thrown forward against restraints. Theme park emergencies typically have well-coordinated rapid response plans, but the rescue process for the Smiler was slow because of the coaster's location on curving track and the height at which the train ended up. Medics and firefighters had to scale the structure, carefully lift the injured off the train, and manage serious trauma on site. Meanwhile, social media buzzed with terrifying photos and eyewitness accounts. The incident put Alton Towers and its parent company under intense scrutiny. Investigations later concluded that a combination of operator error and design flaws contributed to the collision. While the ride itself had safety systems, it seemed that human oversight had a major role in overriding some of these systems. The park closed the Smiler for months, implementing additional safety measures and staff training before reopening. In the aftermath, lawsuits were filed by injured riders seeking compensation for their life-changing injuries. The 2 young women who lost parts of their legs became central figures in the media, discussing their anguish and the challenges they faced. Alton Towers faced a heavy fine and pledged to review its training standards to avoid future tragedies. Many questioned whether rides pushing the boundaries of thrill and technology were worth these risks. Still, after safety upgrades, the Smiler resumed operations and continues to run today. For many, though, the memory of that collision remains a reason to approach extreme coasters with caution, regardless of how advanced or innovative they claim to be. Number 3. Son of Beast, Kings Island, 2006. At Kings Island near Cincinnati, Son of Beast was once the star attraction that tried to break as many records as possible. It opened in 2000 as the world's tallest wooden roller coaster, boasting the first wooden coaster loop in modern history. Inspired by its legendary predecessor, the Beast, it set out to become a bigger, bolder, and more adrenaline-fueled wooden behemoth. For a while, it held fans in awe because of its looming superstructure and intense speed that many wooden coaster enthusiasts enjoyed. However, from the start, Son of Beast was criticized for its rough ride. Riders often complained of being tossed around in their seats, coming off the ride with headaches or sore backs. Part of the problem lay in the challenges of maintaining a wooden coaster of record-breaking size. The bigger the wooden coaster, the more stress and wear each cycle puts on the structure. Over time, cracks, splits, and other structural weaknesses can develop. Regular inspections are supposed to catch these, but sometimes issues can be hidden deep within the layers of wood. On July 9, 2006, the ride made headlines for all the wrong reasons. During one of the winding helix sections, a loud crack resounded through the structure. A piece of track had broken, leaving a noticeable 5-inch dip or dent in the rails. As the train sped over this damaged spot, it jolted violently, bringing the train to a near-immediate stop. Passengers were slammed forward, some banging their heads on the restraint bars or the seat in front of them. Others suffered back and neck strain from the sudden deceleration. In total, 27 people reported injuries ranging from mild to severe, and many ended up in the hospital for observation. Park officials shut down Son of Beast immediately. An extensive investigation showed that the accident stemmed from structural flaws in the wooden beams, as well as the intense forces the ride placed on its own track. Engineers and park maintenance teams worked to strengthen the structure and replace the original trains with lighter ones, hoping this would reduce stress on the wood. However, these lighter trains couldn't make it through the signature vertical loop without stalling, so the loop was taken out in 2006. Despite these changes, Son of Beast's troubles weren't over. Guests continued to complain about the punishing ride. There were lingering reports of minor injuries, and the ride developed a reputation for being too rough to enjoy. Kings Island eventually decided that pouring more money into fixes wasn't worth the risk and bad publicity. The coaster was closed for good in 2009, though it stood as a silent structure for a while before it was finally dismantled. Number 4. Sandblaster, Daytona Beach, 2018. The Sandblaster operated for decades in various locations before settling on the Daytona Beach boardwalk. Its history stretched back more than 40 years, which is rather long for a roller coaster, especially a portable one that had been moved around multiple times. The ride itself wasn't huge. It wasn't known for towering heights or enormous drops. Instead, it was a compact coaster that offered a quick thrill for beachgoers looking to break up their day of sun and sand with some mild adrenaline. By the time the Sandblaster arrived in Daytona, it was already somewhat outdated. The track and trains showed signs of wear, but the ride found an audience thanks to its convenient spot near the beach. On June 14, 2018, it all went wrong when the first 2 cars of a train unexpectedly derailed during a run. People in those front cars found themselves jolted off the tracks, which caused the train to tilt at a precarious angle, partly hanging off the coaster structure. Riders described screaming, confusion, and a very real fear that the entire train would plunge to the ground. Some passers-by tried to help, but there was only so much they could do until emergency responders arrived. Rescue crews had to use special equipment to stabilize the train and reach the passengers stuck in the section that had derailed. 6 people were injured, some with broken bones and other serious physical harm. After the rescue, safety inspectors arrived to figure out what had caused the derailment. They discovered that the upstop wheels, small but important wheels that clip beneath the track to keep the train from lifting off, were too narrow for the track design. Over time, this misalignment put extra stress on the train. It also meant there was a chance the wheels wouldn't properly keep the car locked onto the rails. This design flaw, coupled with inadequate maintenance, created the conditions that led to derailment. The accident put the spotlight on how some older roller coasters are operated. People started asking questions about how well older rides were inspected and whether certain traveling or older stationary coasters needed more frequent checks. Regulators demanded a full inspection of the Sandblaster. Eventually, the ride was shut down for good. The boardwalk itself faced scrutiny, and the entire area came under stricter safety regulations. Number 5. Mindbender, West Edmonton Mall, 1986. The Mindbender is a roller coaster like no other in its setting. This steel multi-loop Schwarzkopf coaster was built inside the massive West Edmonton Mall in Canada. It was an unusual idea, putting a large looping coaster in a shopping center that also housed a water park, mini golf, ice rink, and countless shops. When guests first saw the Mindbender's tracks snaking around indoor structures, they were amazed. The coaster boasted 3 vertical loops, providing a high-octane thrill for those brave enough to give it a go. On June 14, 1986, just a few weeks after the ride opened, tragedy struck. A loud clattering noise came from one of the trains as it coursed along. Later that evening, the unthinkable happened. The wheel assembly on the rear car broke free partway through the ride. No longer attached properly, the car couldn't stay on the rails during the intense loops. It derailed, banging against parts of the track. Given the forces involved, this was disastrous. The jolt caused the lap bars in the rear car to unlock, and the 4 people in that car were ejected. Witnesses in the mall, as well as passengers in other parts of the train, described a nightmarish scene. The car careened out of control, and those 4 passengers flew out, landing roughly 25 feet below, at around 30 miles an hour. It was far too great an impact for the human body to withstand. 3 of them were killed on the spot or soon thereafter. 1 survived with severe injuries. Riders still in the front cars were shaken and terrified, while onlookers in the mall scrambled to help or fled in shock. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, trying to deal with the chaos. The accident triggered a massive investigation by local authorities, mall officials, and independent safety experts. They found that the cause was a faulty wheel assembly in the last car. Schwarzkopf coasters are renowned for their engineering, but any mechanical system can fail if a single component is compromised. The Mindbender was shut down, and the park ended up removing the 4th car entirely, so the train would only run with 3 cars. They also reinforced and re-examined each wheel assembly, checking them meticulously. After renovations and repeated safety inspections, the Mindbender eventually reopened. Many wondered if it was wise to let it keep operating. But Canadian safety officials approved it, saying that the flaws had been addressed. Despite the tragedy, the coaster remains in operation to this day. Time has healed some of the emotional scars, but it remains one of the deadliest indoor coaster incidents in history, and the memory lingers in the minds of those who were there or who heard about it at the time. Number 6. The Demon. Six Flags. Great America, 1998. The Demon at Six Flags. Great America is a classic looping roller coaster that first operated under a different theme. It dates back to 1976, originally called Turn of the Century, before it was rebranded as The Demon in 1980. Fans of older coasters appreciate its retro charm. Simple steel track, a couple of vertical loops, and a corkscrew section. It fits well into Six Flags Great America's lineup, offering moderate thrills compared to some of the park's more modern, towering coasters. On April 18, 1998, the Demon had a scare that, while not resulting in a big casualty count, was still enough to rattle riders and spark discussions about maintenance. During one of the vertical loops, a guide wheel, one of the smaller wheels that helps stabilize the train and ensure it follows the track correctly, came loose. Without that wheel, the train lost its smooth course through the loop. It ended up stalling and getting stuck upside down, leaving riders pinned in their seats, dangling in midair. Emergency teams at the park rushed to get riders down safely. Hanging upside down can be distressing because blood rushes to the head, and riders can start feeling dizzy or faint if left that way too long. Fortunately, the park staff acted quickly. They used harnesses and special equipment to stabilize the train, then lowered the guests. Several people experienced minor injuries or stress-related symptoms, headaches, neck pains, or general panicking, but no one suffered a life-threatening injury. A few were taken to a local hospital for examination, mostly as a precaution. Maintenance crews investigated how the guide wheel detached in the first place. They discovered that it was most likely due to improper maintenance schedules and checks that didn't catch a loosened bolt or an early sign of wear on the wheel assembly. While older coasters can run safely for decades, they require thorough, routine inspections to make sure every nut and bolt is secure. In the aftermath, the park shut the Demon down for the remainder of the season, dedicating time to thorough checks, part replacements, and an overall review. The next year, the Demon reopened with updated procedures and continued to operate in subsequent seasons. Number 7. The New Texas Giant, Six Flags Over Texas, 2013. The New Texas Giant sits at Six Flags Over Texas in Arlington. It began its life as just the Texas Giant, a massive wooden coaster that opened in 1990. For years, it was celebrated for its height and breathtaking drops, but it also earned a reputation for being rough on riders. By 2009, Six Flags decided it was time for a major overhaul. They enlisted Rocky Mountain Construction to transform it into a steel hybrid coaster, keeping the wooden support structure but adding sleek steel tracks. The result, unveiled in 2011 as the New Texas Giant, became an impressive blend of classic wooden architecture and a smooth steel ride system. Fans raved about its extreme angles and buttery ride. Then, on July 19, 2013, a fatal accident disturbed the ride's reborn reputation. A woman, who reportedly exceeded the suggested passenger size for the coaster, boarded the ride anyway. When the lap bar restraint came down, it didn't fully secure her body, likely because of her overall girth and torso shape. But for reasons unclear at the time, she was still allowed to ride. As the coaster headed into its course, the train braked, twisted, and crested a tall hill. On that second hill, the woman was ejected from her seat. Witnesses described the horror of seeing her fly out of the train, falling approximately 75 feet onto the metal structure below before she hit the ground. She did not survive the impact. The ride was stopped immediately. Park staff and emergency responders rushed to the area, but it was too late to save her life. Many who witnessed it were shaken, and news spread quickly about another tragic accident at a major amusement park. Six Flags Over Texas closed the New Texas Giant, while investigators from the state and from within the company looked into how the restraints failed. Though there was speculation about mechanical faults, The primary issue was that the lap bar system didn't sufficiently secure larger riders. The staff at the loading station should have noticed she wasn't properly locked in, or they should have conducted a seat check that would have barred her from riding. In the aftermath, Six Flags faced criticism for not having an alternative restraint design for larger guests, and for possibly letting the desire to move lines along overshadow thorough safety checks. After the incident, the park modified the restraint system, adding seatbelts and adjusting the seat design so operators had a clearer indication if a rider wasn't fully locked in. They also posted clearer size precautions, reminding guests that certain body shapes or measurements could make it unsafe to ride. For fans of the new Texas Giant, the accident was a dark chapter in what had become a beloved coaster's story. The ride eventually reopened with upgraded restraints, and lines returned, but many still recall that day. It underscored that while roller coasters are exciting, they're not a one-size-fits-all experience. Safety bars, lap belts, and harnesses are designed with a range of body types in mind, but if someone's shape or size falls too far outside that range, the risk becomes significant. This tragic event stands as a potent reminder of why parks must enforce their safety guidelines without exception, ensuring that thrill seekers get a rush without putting their lives in danger. Despite these tragedies, roller coasters remain among the safest forms of recreation when measured by injuries per ride cycle. Millions enjoy them every year without incident. The goal, of course, is to bring that number of accidents closer to zero. By understanding what went wrong in past incidents, parks can continue to improve ride design, maintenance, and operations, and riders can continue to feel that hard-to-replicate rush of speed, height, and excitement without compromising on safety.